Hey, this is Neil's on Dynasty. Please like, share, and subscribe. Buy some silver, some platinum, and some crystallized osmium. And be kind, helpful, and grateful. Don't listen to me. Everything I say is to be taken as bull crappy. Now we got everything out of the way. Let's get on with the show. This is about Alabama.
Has announced the US space station is moving from Colorado to Alabama, and he's addressed recent rumors about his health this morning.
I am thrilled to report that the U.S. Space Command headquarters will move to the beautiful locale of a place called Huntsville, Alabama, forever to be known from this point forward as Rocket City. Okay, so Huntsville, Alabama, we love Alabama. I only won it by about 47 points. I don't think that influenced my decision, though, right? That didn't, right? But we had a lot of competition for this, and Alabama's getting it, Huntsville in particular. So congratulations, everybody. Katie, congratulations. This will result in more than 30,000 Alabama jobs and probably much more than that, and hundreds of millions of dollars of investment. And that's billions, because it can't be millions. It's billions and billions of dollars. Most importantly, this decision will help America defend and dominate the high frontier, as they call it.
Yeah. So you heard that, right? Alabama. What's up, JF Enterprise? I actually knew that Huntsville they were supposed to have gotten it a while ago, but Biden administration came in and said that they were going to move it to LA. Luckily, no money was thrown at that, so it's just a matter of paperwork to get it going back to Huntsville, Alabama, which is another one of many reasons why I like the Alabama area. Now let's get on to something else here. Oh yeah, let's see. Let's talk about how China's dying. The BYD, the largest, supposedly, electric car company. This is the Electric Viking. BYD's first double monthly flatline since 2020. China's sales shrank 14%. Giving him a thumbs up. Now let's see what he's got to say.
Are literally crashing. They're down nearly 25%. Their electric car sales are skyrocketing, up 35%. Clearly, demand for plug-in hybrids is diminishing, in particular for BYD's plug-in hybrids, and demand for EVs.
No competition for the crown, Jeff. I can't get the crown, so it's all you, baby.
Is continuing to surge. Now, I've been trying to warn people, buy a plug-in hybrid. If your concern is resale value, if it's not, then who cares? But if your concern is resale value,
what we're talking about,
what is actually,
it's going to be several different topics. We're talking right now about the largest electric car company in the world, supposedly a Chinese car company, but people don't seem to understand that Chinese companies are 100% subsidized by the Chinese government, and that is why they are the number one. But people aren't buying, so they found they were getting a 14% loss this year. So we're talking about that. We're going to be talking about shipping. Let's see what else we're going to talk about. Yeah, North Korea investing some money in shipping. We're going to be talking about the replacement for the Warthog, the A10, and several other topics.
Happening in major markets like China, which represents around 40% of the world's car sales. YouTube's new algorithm means that you're often not getting all of our videos in your feed. There's 7,500. I'm pretty sure you're probably not seeing a lot of them. In the description, there is a link to our newsletter. Click on that and you can get an update every day of all the latest news in the electric car industry. So hello, my friends. Welcome to the channel. I'm Sam Evans. You're watching The Electric Viking. Great to have you with us. BYD. Sales numbers basically flat versus last month. But the big news is what's actually happening with BYD sales. BYD sold 80,800 vehicles overseas in August, growing 157% year on year. And that's good. It was the same as July. Sales overseas were basically the same as last month. But as you can see, BYD badly needed to diversify.
Stop buying generic Viagra if you're over
Oh, my
60. You
goodness
qualify for
gracious.
9 tablets of 100 milligram.
It was at risk of being so China-centric that if there was some sort of shock in China, it could, well, have all of its eggs in one basket. But that's clearly changing, which is a really good move from BYD. The company sold 373,000 vehicles in August, marking a 0.15% year-on-year increase. In other words, they sold almost exactly the same number of cars in August this year versus what they sold in August of last year. That means that BYD sales in China have actually declined in August of this year versus August of last year.
Yep.
That's, I think, really interesting. Competition in China is fierce. BYD has reduced its prices. In fact, it just reduced its prices of its direct Tesla Model 3 rival, which now costs $16,000, and the Model 3 is like $30,000. Actually, Model 3 is actually about $32,000, the cheapest version. It's half the price of a Model 3. Anyhow, this is the second consecutive month that BYD's new energy vehicles, or basically BYD's sales growth, has remained below 1% year on year. In other words, it hasn't grown at all versus last year. BYD's NEVs include passenger vehicles and commercial vehicles. Passenger vehicles, while there was 371,000 deliveries, which was an increase of 0.17%, statistically irrelevant, but it was an increase of 8.9% versus last month. Now you can see here, this chart from CNF Post shows you what exactly is going on. And that green line is where BYD is right now. Last year, BYD sales in the months of July and August, as you can see, were continuing to increase. But this year, they've been flat. Since March, sales have been flat. July was down a bit, but as you can see, really for 5 months in a row, pretty much flat, which is very unusual. Looking at BYD's year of 2023 and 2024, you can see there wasn't really any flatness there. It was all pretty much growth. Looking at BYD's commercial vehicles, their sales were 2,125, which was a decline of around 5% year on year. And it was down 35% versus last month. BYD had a really good start to the year for commercial vehicles, but they've been declining recently. I'm not sure why. I've got no idea. When it comes to EVs, though, this is the one area where BYD is clearly winning. Their EV sales increased by 34.5% year on year and 12.2% versus last month. In other words, BYD, clearly their focus has been on plug-in hybrids for the past 12 months. There's no doubt it has. The majority of their investment money has gone into their plug-in hybrids. Look at how many models they have. The luxury cars they sell, most of them are plug-in hybrids. Not all of them, but most of them. Demand for those vehicles is going down. And there's a lot of tough competition for BYD with plug-in hybrids now. There's plenty of EREVs, which people in China and engineers will tell you are more an EV with a generator motor, whereas a plug-in hybrid is more of an internal combustion car. It's more of a hybrid, put it that way. So there's the perception from a lot of people that EREVs are better. Not necessarily they are, but that's the perception. And a lot of these newer plug-in hybrids and newer EREVs from other manufacturers have a lot more electric-only range. And I suspect maybe that's part of the reason for the decline, but it also could be the fact that, to be honest, more people just want to buy an electric car now. They're getting used to the concept of going electric. So you can see here, BYD's passenger EV monthly sales have done really well this year and have continued to increase in a similar way to how they increased over the past 2 years. But BYD's plug-in hybrids have not done that at all. And in fact, you can see here they're trending well below last year. I mean, it's not just 1 month. They're trended below last year now for 4 straight months in a row. As you can see here, in April, plug-in hybrid sales for BYD were the same as April last year. But then May, June, July, and August, they were all down. And the decline is actually growing. Look at the difference here between August, right? It's greater than the difference in July. Basically, this decline in BYD's plug-in hybrid growth and the decline in sales is actually very, very significant. And it's a pretty strong indicator of where customer demand actually is.
Yep. Interesting. Actually, Jeff, I've done a couple videos where the next guy I'm going to show you what's going on with shipping has done a couple shows on here recently. As a matter of fact, in the Pacific to this day, there is a car container ship at the bottom of the ocean about a month ago. I don't know, they probably burned out by now. About a month ago, it sank. It was a mid-sized tanker, about 1,000 foot long, and it had shitloads of cars on it, and like 20 or 30 electric vehicles. And the electric vehicles caught on fire, and the ship went under and hit the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. And those electric vehicles were still on fire underneath a couple thousand foot of water. So yeah, electric vehicles are very, 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 very bad. Yeah, the batteries are a big problem as well with the EVs. But let's go on to a more positive thing. And as I said, Sal Macagliano, what's going on with shipping? This gentleman right here. But we're talking about Korea invest $5 billion to make American shipbuilding great again. This is just one of a whole bunch of countries throwing money at America's infrastructure for ports and for boat building. So it's about 18 minutes long. We're not going to watch the whole thing, but
South Korea is investing $5 billion in U.S. shipbuilding. I'm your host, Sal Macagliano. Welcome to today's episode. So yesterday, August 26, 2025, up at the Hanwha Shipyard in Philadelphia, they had the commissioning for the third national security multi-mission vessel. That is the training ship State of Maine. That is Elaine Chao, former Secretary of Transportation during the first Trump administration, doing the honors, being into service the vessel. Now, State of Maine is the third in the class of 5 vessels. The first one went to the finest maritime academy in the world, the first and foremost, New York Maritime College. Second one went to Massachusetts Maritime. Third one goes to Maine. The fourth one is heading down to Texas. And the fifth is going to the West Coast over to California. But it was during the commissioning and christening of this vessel that the South Koreans, while attending, by the way, the president of South Korea was at this event, announced a decision by Hanwha to commit $5 billion into U.S. shipbuilding. We're going to look at all of this, break it down for you, and what it means going forward, and why is it Korea investing in U.S. shipbuilding. If you're new to the channel, hey, take a moment, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so be alerted about new videos as they come out. Here's a story by Mike Schuller over
Hey, what's up, man?
Captain. The State of Maine, third of the national security multi-mission vessels, entered the fleet. The ship, $350 million, serves a dual purpose as for training future mariners while standing ready for humanitarian missions. The South Korean president, Lee Jae-myung, and acting maritime administrator Sang Yi shared remarks during the ceremony. It is the latter, Sang Yi's remarks, I want to focus on because he made some great ones there during the event.
And this ship represents a lot more than just steel and engineering. It stands as a symbol of American commitment to dominance, economic strength, and national readiness. The State of Maine, we're not just launching a vessel. We're launching opportunities. Opportunities for cadets in the Maritime Academy to train on state-of-the-art equipment, opportunities to rapidly respond to humanitarian crises, and opportunities to restore American leadership in shipbuilding and sea power. The Department of Transportation and Merit are proud to.
That means jobs, 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 well-paying jobs if you have your TWIC card.
Lead this effort. Using the innovative vessel construction manager model, we've delivered this ship with just less than 30 change orders. That's almost unheard of in shipbuilding, especially in government shipbuilding. That efficiency has saved taxpayers hundreds of millions of dollars and years of time. This is how we rebuild an industry, by unleashing innovation, cutting red tape, making smart investments, and forging strong partnerships.
So Sang Yi is the acting maritime administrator. The current maritime administrator is still waiting for a hearing. We're on our second appointee at this point. No telling when we're going to get a confirmation hearing. But I will say Sang-Yi has been absolutely out in front, more vocal, more in person than I've seen of many maritime administrators. And most importantly, this change really represents a potential, evolution we're seeing in U.S. shipbuilding. This image right here kind of encapsulates that. Here you see the new state of Maine to the left, and then the old state of Maine in the background. That is a former military Sealift Command survey vessel, the USNS Tanner. It's going out of service, and it's being replaced by this new state-of-the-art vessel. It is very innovative, and one of the things I think that we're seeing is that this is being done in partnership, not just with the United States, but South Korea. The fact that the South Korean president was there is no mistake. Let's be clear. South Korea is investing in U.S. shipbuilding, but the question is why? Why is South Korea doing this, and what does it mean going forward? So there's another story by Mike Schuller over at G-Captain. So as we're having the announcement for the christening,
What's up, Gold and
we have
Silver?
Hanwha announcing that their U.S. subsidiary has placed orders for
Yes.
10 Jones
Salma
Act
Tagliano.
compliant medium-range oil and chemical tankers from the Hanwha Philly shipyard, with the first vessel expected for delivery in early 2029. The company has also exercised an option for a second liquefied natural gas carrier. That's following on last month's contract for the first U.S. LNG carrier in almost 5 decades. Now, at this event, we had the South Korean president, but we also had the governor of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, was there. And this comes on the heels of a summit talk between President Lee and President Trump on Monday. And this is all part of a larger commitment by South Korea to contribute $150 billion to revitalizing U.S. shipbuilding. Now,
Did you hear that number? $150 billion is going to be invested in modernizing, just like what I told you guys about 6 months ago was going to happen. It's finally starting to happen. If you guys get your TWIC cards, if you need money, you need good jobs, you want long, high-paying jobs coming here very, very shortly, the people who have their TWIC cards will be the first ones getting those jobs. And that means you have security clearance to work at ports of entry, which are where the ships come in, where you build ships, where all the work is going to be. $150 billion is not a small drop in a bucket when it comes to shipbuilding. That gets you $150 billion could easily get you 50 2,000-foot long ships. Easy, without any problem. And they're investing in our ports and infrastructure. The money coming to the building the vessels will be coming later. There's going to be close to $500 billion thrown into the shipbuilding industry over the next couple of years, to where if you already got the required documentation to work on the docks at the shipyards, building these things, moving crates around, being a safety person or whatever, you're going to be the first one to have a job, and it's going to be a good paying job.
you got to be asking, it's like, wait a minute, why is South Korea so big to revitalize U.S. shipbuilding? Well, it's easy to understand once you look at what is happening to South Korean shipbuilding.
I caught my stepson spying on me in the shower at the same time that my husband used this trick to get hard. I discovered something.
So back in December, Hanwha completed its $100 million acquisition of the Philly shipyard. Philly shipyard, by the way, has gone through several hands over the years. It's the former Philadelphia Naval Shipyard, a portion of it, in particular the 2 big dry docks where the Montana-class battleships were supposed to be built. But here we see Hanwha buying in. You see these statements here. David Kim, the former executive vice president of Hanwha Defense, who was appointed CEO, said this: "We plan to grow and build on a long tradition of success by expanding production using advanced technologies and supporting the national revitalization of U.S. shipyards." Remember, this is before Donald Trump became president, but it was after the election. Meanwhile, over in South Korea, you have this one from March. A significant milestone for South Korea's maritime industry. Hanwha Ocean successfully completed maintenance and overhaul work on Military Sealift Command's dry cargo ship USNS Wally Schirra. The project spanned 6 months and encompassed hull and engine repairs, major equipment inspections and replacement, systems upgrade, including the replacement of the stern rudder. Now, overseas maintenance on vessels is not unusual. We've seen it done in the past, but this was a fairly extensive one. Again, replacing the entire rudder assembly. South Korea is also making a pitch to offer replacement cranes for the United States. These are the big ship-to-shore cranes that came under a lot of targeting by the U.S. Trade Representative. Jameson Greer met with two company CEOs out in Korea back in May to discuss this about rebuilding the U.S. shipbuilding industry and to replace the port cranes. A lot of these are what's known as ZPMC. That is the company in China that builds these cranes. There's a big effort to try to get China out of the maritime infrastructure in the United States. Now, Hanwha isn't just looking at the Philly shipyard. Back in June, Hanwha Group received clearance from the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States to increase its shareholding in Australian shipbuilder Austal Limited up to 100%, marking a significant milestone. The company currently holds a 9.9% stake in Austal, acquired back in March of 2025. It plans to increase this to 19.9%. Austal's U.S.-based subsidiary, Austal USA, is a major U.S. shipbuilder and defense contractor. Austal is down in Mobile, Alabama. They had built the Independence-class littoral combat ship.
Hey, Pete, did you hear that? Pete, the Sasquatchy and I just got off the phone. We're going to be building a catamaran, and it's going to be down in the Mobile area. And I just wanted to bring attention to Pete the Sasquatch. He said that he mentioned the shipbuilding in Mobile, Alabama, where Pete and I were just talking on the phone about.
They built the Spearhead class fast transports. They have multiple U.S. government contracts right now to build vessels for the U.S. Navy, for the Military Sea Lift Command. There's a ton of contracts sitting in Austal right now. And here we see Hanwha getting into that area. Now, it is not just Hanwha that's involved with this. Back in April, HII, this is Huntington Ingalls, they operate the shipyards in Newport News and Pascagoula. Them and HD Hyundai Heavy Industries signed a memorandum of understanding to boost collaboration on military and commercial shipbuilding. The agreement represents a concrete step towards strengthening the maritime industrial bases of both countries. According to Brian Planchette, the HII Executive Vice President and President of Ingalls Shipbuilding, he said, "Today's agreement reflects our commitment to explore all opportunities to expand U.S. shipbuilding capacity in support of national security. By working with our shipbuilding allies and sharing best practices, we believe this MOU offers real potential to help accelerate delivery of quality ship." Then in August, we have this. Cerberus Capital Management and Hyundai announced today a strategic partnership to launch Cerberus Maritime, a new investment strategy aimed at rebuilding the United States maritime industrial base. The partnership aligns with U.S. government's broader efforts to revitalize domestic maritime capabilities. This comes after President Trump's executive order restoring America's maritime dominance. HD Hyundai, one of the largest shipbuilders, will serve as an anchor investor to the strategy while also providing technical expertise in shipbuilding, marine engineering, and digital maritime solutions.
What's going on here, Daniel? What I think is America has been controlled since 1913 by the imperialistic English elites. Our financial system has. That's why we pay income tax instead of have tax tariffs, because also in 1913, the Federal Reserve was started, but so was the income tax that funds the Federal Reserve. So we're getting rid of all of that. And what's happening now is we're being allowed to do business with other countries that we've never been allowed to do business with in over 112, 113 years, because our financial system's been controlled mainly to allow the English and Europeans to gain the wealth off of the backs of us Americans. So that's one thing that's changing, in my opinion.
Cerberus is one of many companies looking to get into constructing vessels for the U.S. Navy, and particularly autonomous vessels. These are unmanned vessels or minimally crewed vessels.
And they're going to be built in Pascagoula, Mississippi. That's the secondary location for where I was talking to Pete about building our boat, because right now they are looking for investors who want to build their own boats, because they're building a whole new port and dock system in Pascagoula area. And they're looking for other boat builders that want to go in with them to expand the port at the initial stage of building the infrastructure of the port. And that they're going to be a huge boat builder within 3 years. They're doing totally autonomous ships. I did a show on it about a week or two ago, like 100-meter long AI-controlled war vessels.
for the U.S. Navy. This is the big thing that the U.S. Navy is investigating.
What's up,
I have my
Mo?
criticisms of autonomous unmanned vessels because I think
What's
we
up,
just need to build
Zardos?
boats, and the autonomy adds a new layer on top of that. I think that it's an issue that we can deal with at another time. But what's interesting to see here is that Hyundai is getting more wrapped up into U.S. shipbuilding. Then, as noted earlier, Hanwha is already announcing that they're going to build liquefied natural gas carriers, LNGs, in the United States. This is a big issue. They're talking about reflagging LNGs into the U.S. fleet so that we can get U.S. flagged liquefied natural gas carriers hauling liquefied natural gas overseas. One of the issues in the President Executive Order and also in the SHIPS Act.
That executive order I told you guys about a couple months ago. This is all part of it. That's why I've been mentioning quite a bit about shipbuilding coming back to America. This has all been planned for a long time.
Is a plan to start requiring under basically cargo preference that a certain percentage of U.S. exports be hauled on U.S. ships. Those ships do not have to be U.S. built to be engaged in the international trade. So you can reflag in the vessels. The issue is going to be the higher operating costs for American crews and American companies.
Oh,
how do you offset
I
that?
said
They
hi.
traditionally offset that with the Maritime Security Program, a subsidy for ship operations. And subsidies are not unusual in shipping. We see it done in Korea, Japan, and China when it comes to shipbuilding, either direct or indirect subsidies. And not wanting to be left out in the cold, Samsung has made an agreement with Vigor. Vigor is a big repair facility company in the United States. This collaboration aims to deliver expanded forward deployed maintenance, repair, and overhaul capacity, targeting at increased fleet availability for the U.S. Navy and the Military Sealift Command. It's going to be a strategic alliance, and the goal here is to increase the potential for repair capabilities for the United States. Right now, repairing in the United States is at a premium because of ship repair capability, space, personnel. And if you can expand that overseas, that increases your ability. If you can do some of those repairs like was done with the Wally Schirra over in Korea, then you can keep ships forward deployed and get the repair work done. And then in the midst of all these stories, this one slides in. South Korea's top shipbuilder consolidates ahead of the MASGA push. So MASGA, this is another acronym. This is something that Korea has put together, Make America Shipbuilding Great Again. So South Korea's HD Hyundai Heavy Industries, world's biggest shipbuilder, said on Wednesday that it plans to merge with its affiliate HD Hyundai Mipo as it targets a bigger slice of the U.S. shipbuilding market. This goes from a statement from HD Hyundai Heavy ahead of the full-scale launch of the MASGA project following the Korea-U.S. summit. And as countries around the world are strengthening naval power, demand for K-defense is expected to increase further. The company aims to quickly seize opportunities in the rapidly growing global defense market. As South Korea's top builder of naval ships, Hyundai wants to combine its expertise and technologies in the field with MIPO's dock facilities and skilled workers. I'm not sure they're the biggest shipbuilder in the world, by the way, because China has just recently consolidated two of their big shipyards together. But this is the issue that's at play here, is that Korea is under a lot of pressure at home for shipbuilding. So let's take a look at the data here. So this is from BRS Shipbrokers. They do their annual report. I do a video on this every year. I want to highlight to you this issue. So this is their section on shipbuilding. It talks about China's increase in dominance. When you look at the growth from 2022 to 2024, one of the things you see is orders are increasing, deliveries are increasing, the order book is up. We're seeing a growth of the active fleet, and then the order book as a percentage of the active fleet is growing. But look over here at where those ships are being ordered. In 2022, China had 51.5%. 2024, 67.3%. It is increased, taking a 16% share of world trade in 2 years. Where has that 16% come from? Well, South Korea went from 27.5% down to 17%. They lost 10.5%. Japan, 16.1% down to 11.1%. They lost 5%. So basically, Europe's down to 1.1. Even the rest of the world is down China is becoming the world shipbuilder, and at a large, fast pace. There's no fear of South Korea not being shipbuilding. They're going to do shipbuilding.
See, the problem with China is, and I did a video of this about, I think it was about a month ago, 5 weeks ago. Their newest destroyer is supposed to be like the flagship of their navy. It sank as soon as they fucking launched it. So, and also Pakistan was given a destroyer by China, and they don't want to sail it because they're scared it might sink. So I am totally not concerned. My main concern about getting boats built from China is that they're insufficient to be considered a boat, much less be able to be safely run as a boat. There's no way in hell I would trust anything boat building from China whatsoever. They've got too many experiences of their boats sinking.
But they are definitely losing their market share. What's interesting, when you look at the numbers even a little bit further, it is the growth that China is grabbing. So if you look at South Korean numbers again here, yeah, they dropped nearly 10.5%. But look at the data. The deadweight tonnage is about the same. The number of ships has actually grown. And in the case of Japan, they have actually gone up in both deadweight tonnage and ships. What China is capturing is the new builds. Their deadweight tonnage has over doubled. And in terms of number of ships, it's gone from over 2,000 ships to almost 3,400 ships. They are grabbing those new markets. They're grabbing the new ships that are out there. And this is what South Korea is worried about. Even if they just maintain themselves, they are losing percentage share. So they've got to go look for new markets and grab new share. And the American market is a good one to grab, because it's going to take years to get the American shipbuilding up. Remember, they talked about the first of 10 Jones Act tankers don't arrive till 2029. 2025 right now, people. So we're talking 4 years. And that's because Philly is busy. They're finishing the last 2 of the national security multi-mission vessels. They're building 3 Matson container ships. Those tankers are going to be coming online here in the next about year or 2. They're going to start cutting steel and working on them. It'll still take 2 years to build them once they get the steel cut. So that's why you're not going to see it till about 2029, because it'll be 2027 before they can get them going. That is key. They've got to get this up. And remember, the only way you're going to start building more ships in the United States is to start building ships. And this is the first step. It's got to be more than Philly shipyard, Bud, because Philly by itself cannot do it. We need to see that expand. We need to see shipbuilding down at NASCO, down at Amphels, at Brownsville, maybe down in Pascagoula, maybe a new yard open up somewhere out in a field, these new greenfield evolutions, either in California, Florida, Gulf Coast, southeast part of the United States. Definitely have to see it. But this is the key. Korea is investing in U.S. shipbuilding because it helps Korean shipbuilding. And we should be aware of that, because when it becomes a choice between Korean shipbuilding and U.S. shipbuilding, they're going to choose Korea. And we need to be aware of that. And that's why we need to build up the industrial base here in the United States. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, hey, take a moment, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so be alerted about new videos as they come out.
Yes, do that. Indeed. Because he's a cool dude to watch, obviously. And we're going to shift gears over to something I've been keeping an eye on for several years, the replacement for the A-10 Warthog. And it's called the OA-1K Skyraider is what they think is going to replace it. This is Wes O'Donnell. What makes the OA-1K Skyraider 2 game changer in air support? This is the A-10 Warthog replacement.
It's gloriously low-tech on purpose. The United States Air Force is bringing back a prop plane. No, seriously. Propellers, tail wheel, the works. Did someone at the Pentagon finally watch Platoon and realize, wait, the A-10s are getting scrapped, but troops still need close air support? Meet the OA-1K Skyraider 2. It's ugly, it's rugged, it's everything the F-35 isn't, and that's by design. You can't just mothball all your warthogs and expect a spreadsheet to cover Green Berets pinned down in some canyon halfway around the world.
True that.
The Pentagon solution? Send in something simple enough to fix with a hammer and tough enough to land, where infrastructure means a dirt strip and a leaky jerry can. Hey friends, Wes here, veteran of the U.S. Army Infantry and the U.S. Air Force, law grad, and survivor of the Great KY Jelly Barracks incident at Fort Campbell in 2001. That got a little hairy. The Skyraider 2 is the love child of Air Tractor and L3 Harris. It's currently sweating through developmental testing at Eglin Air Force Base. And who's interested? Well, the U.S. Special Operations Command. Because if you're out in the middle of nowhere, places with no Starbucks, no paved runway, and definitely no Wi-Fi, you want something that works every single time.
Boy,
you don't
howdy.
slap Skyraider on a tail unless you're conjuring some serious ghosts. The original A1 Skyraider was a flying anachronism.
Well, first off, I can tell you from experience, back in 1991, the A-10 was a big deal. And let me tell you right now, the psychological effect that airplane had against the Iraqis and the psychological impact it had on me personally, when I knew we had the A-10s over our head and that sound is the most terrifying sound if you're not an American soldier. Luckily, I was an American soldier, and it was a very gratifying sound. So I hope they have something impressive on this new airplane that'll give it as a big psychological advantage as the A-10 has.
Big, slow, and built to haul more bombs than a B-17. In Vietnam, it flew so close to the action that ground troops could actually wave at the pilots. Naming the new OA-1K Skyraider 2 signals that the Air Force Special Operations Command, or AFSOC, is leaning hard into the legacy of ugly, unglamorous close air support. The kind of mission where you're not dogfighting MiGs or dodging radar locks, but covering a team of Green Berets pinned down in a canyon 40 minutes from the nearest runway. The kind of mission where the pilot knows the name of the ground team leader, and if the mission goes sideways, he's got enough fuel and firepower to make someone else have a worse day. It's a name that tells allies and enemies alike, this isn't a show pony, it's a workhorse. The Skyraider 2, like its namesake, isn't trying to dominate the skies. It's trying to own the 500 feet above the treetops. In the unforgiving terrain of places like Somalia, Yemen, or eastern Ukraine, that's where the real fight happens. And in those places, the name Skyraider isn't just a nod to history, it's a warning shot. This new Skyraider 2, it's not trying to win a beauty contest or set a speed record. It's here to do a job, support the guys on the ground. If you're a special ops team 40 minutes from the nearest airbase, you want a pilot who knows your call sign, your dog's name, and who can circle overhead until the enemy gets tired and gives up or dies. And here's where it gets spicy. This is the first tailwheel aircraft in U.S. Air Force service since disco was cool. Tailwheel.
See, now this is interesting when it said Air Force service. The A-10 is Marines. I know crap loads of retired A-10 pilots, and every single one of them is a Marine. This is going to be Air Force personnel. They said it's going to be run by the Air Force. That's a dynamic shift.
Planes, for my non-aviation nerds, dance on the runway. They don't just land, they swerve, they skid, and sometimes they pirouette like a ballerina with a death wish. The Air Force test pilots had to relearn how to fly using the A282U, a civilian crop duster.
I'm not a badass. I come from a lineage of people who stand up and go to war for the countries they serve.
Before stepping up to the Skyraider 2. Mess it up and you'll be spinning in the grass wondering why your maintainers look so disappointed. Major Jacob Marsh put it politely, quote, "Flying the OA-1K has been a rewarding experience." Translation? This bird will embarrass you if you let your guard down. Let's talk about what's hanging off the wings. The Skyraider 2 carries 2 LAU-131 pods, each with 7 APKWS-2 rockets. That's 14 laser-guided Freedom Sticks, plus a Moog dual-rail launcher for 2 AGM-114 Hellfires, just in case you meet anything that needs to be deleted with prejudice. On the left wing, the multimodal sensor pod, housing Westcam MX-15 and MX-20 EO IR turrets. Both the pilot and the backseated combat systems operator can control sensors independently, meaning you can track, laze, and strike at the same time. Survivability is baked in. Missile warning sensors, countermeasure dispensers, and enough radios to make a signals platoon jealous. There's even a KU band SATCOM bump on the fuselage, so ground teams can ping the sensors remotely, call it a drone with a pulse. Now, this isn't about stealth, super cruise, or taking on Russian S-400s. This is about showing up every time when the big, shiny jets are too expensive, too fragile, or too busy burning $70,000 an hour to bomb a dirt road in Burkina Faso. It's rugged, it's cheap, it's easy to maintain, and so low profile that half the Pentagon forgot they bought it. That's the point. You want a loiter king for special ops, not a diva. Okay, let's address the titanium bathtub in the room. Is this the new A-10? No, the A-10 is the flying equivalent of a medieval warhammer. It's built to shrug off cannon fire, keep the pilot alive inside a titanium
There's your
bathtub,
A-10.
and burnt its way through anything dumb enough to wear armor on the open steppes. Skyraider 2 is a Swiss Army knife. It doesn't need a mile-long runway or a battalion of ground crew. It's optimized for chaos, pop-up insurgencies, highway landings, jungle strips, and targets of opportunity. And here's a bit of American muscle for you. Skyraider 2 is built in only Texas by Air Tractor. Oh, hold on a second. Paris voodoo magic. Only is the kind of town where everyone knows everyone, and your airplane gets built by the same people who probably fixed your tractor. Congress loves it because jobs. The Air Force loves it because it works, and Special Operations loves it because it shows up where other jets get cold feet. So what's the plan? Well, Special Operations wants 75 Skyraider 2s. Some are already flying at Herbert Field and the 137th Special Operations Wing in Oklahoma. The formal training unit is at Will Rogers Air National Guard Base, where new pilots learn if you can fly this, you can fly pretty much anything. Let's be real. The Pentagon never met a budget line it didn't want to inflate. The F-35 is cool if you need to live stream your bank account draining in real time. But if you need persistent support for special operations, low and slow, and all you have is a goat path for a runway, you want a Skyraider 2. AFSOC didn't wait for a committee. They yanked this thing into existence with the Armed Overwatch program. Because at the end of the day, not every job calls for a hypersonic missile. Sometimes you just need a propeller, a pair of Hellfires, and a pilot who knows how to land in a cornfield. The Armed Overwatch program allows special operators to requisition equipment.
Also, another thing he's not mentioning, that engine there is it doesn't have nearly as big a heat signature as a jet airplane. So anytime a heat seeker comes after this airplane, if they have countermeasures where they fire off those phosphorescents in the back, those phosphorescents will be definitely hotter than this engine will ever get. So that gives them good protection. And it's also air cooled, which means it doesn't overheat, to where if you go into afterburn on jet engines, it instantly not overheats, but the temperature rises significantly.
Without Pentagon approval. That's right, Skyraider 2 didn't really have Pentagon approval. Special Forces just willed this thing into existence. So the next time you see a Skyraider 2, don't laugh at the propeller. That propeller means you can fly slow, land rough, and stay on station for hours without the enemy knowing you're there until it's too late. It fills a niche so glaringly obvious in hindsight that one wonders how many missions were flown by B-1 bombers or fast jets at $70,000 an hour when a modified crop duster would have done the job for a cheeseburger and a case of JP8. It may not look like much on a tarmac, flanked by Raptors and Reapers, but that's exactly the point. The Skyraider 2 isn't meant to be a symbol of prestige. It's meant to show up, shut up, and get the job done. In a military ecosystem addicted to high-end warfighting, it's the low-cost countermeasure no one saw coming, except the guys who actually needed it. That's it for today.
Yeah, a lot of requests were put in for a type of airplane like that. I'm just concerned because it's a propellered airplane that doesn't have the resistance, bullet resistance that the A-10 has, because you can really blow apart an A-10 and it can fly with one wing. Its tail blown off, it'll still fly and land. It's very, very well survivable for the pilot. and I hope this one is too, because that is a definite must in my opinion. Oh, we're not done, Danielle. I got one or two more, and then we'll end the live stream. Let's see. Oh, here we go. Let's see. Ooh, no, I love space stuff, so we're gonna do this. I know you guys hate it. I'm always shilling space, but frill it. Let's shill it away, baby. Space is coming, no matter whether you like it or not.
We are going to the moon.
We are going to the
and
moon.
we are going there to stay this time.
We're going to stay this time.
That's the plan that the American government, NASA, and dozens of their international and commercial partners have.
I'm going to have a robot dog, and I'm going to put it up there, and I'm going to tell him, stay. And boom, there's us staying on the moon.
Have made. And assuming that they can stick to that plan, what we are looking at is so much more than just landing people on the moon. Landing is not easy, but it's also not the hardest part. We have done that before. But what comes next is something entirely new. We need to build on the moon. We need to build a permanent base, essentially a small city on an alien world. And no one is exactly sure how that's going to go. But we do have some incredibly practical and innovative new solutions for life beyond the Earth. First, we need to talk about where this moon base is going to be located. The moon is a big place, and every previous human landing has happened right around the middle in a nice, flat, safe location that was very easy for direct radio communication with the Earth. But that was the 1960s. And this time, when we return to the moon, we are aiming for a much more interesting location, the lunar South Pole. This region is littered with impact craters, mountain ranges, and ancient volcanoes. Some of the low valleys and crater beds are in permanent shadow. The ground hasn't seen sunlight in millions or billions of years, and it's probably full of water ice that was transported to the inner solar system on asteroids and comets. NASA has identified 13 potential landing sites for the Artemis program. They are mostly on little patches of sunlight around crater rims or the tops of low mountains, surrounded by deep shadows and rough terrain. This will be a deeply fascinating region for scientific discovery, but it will be equally as dangerous for the people who need to live and work on the moon for weeks and months at a time. So this is going to require infrastructure like we've never seen before. All of the fundamentals for a city on Earth need to be recreated in the most hostile environment with the most limited resources. So where do we begin? With roads. Yes, where we're going, we do need roads and landing pads and other solid surfaces to operate.
Most music apps have some kind of one-size-fits-all workout playlist. But you do music
and build on. The problem that needs to be solved is dust. The lunar surface is coated in a relatively thin, yet incredibly light and fluffy layer of ultra-fine dust. Each grain of this moon sand is sharp and abrasive like broken glass. During the Apollo missions, it was known to cut through the outer layers of spacesuits and scratch the glass on the astronauts' helmets. To make matters worse, the dust is also clingy. Dust accumulation on the lunar roving vehicle caused it to overheat by clogging up the radiator. The trick is that without atmosphere and with very little gravity, once you kick up dust, it can really travel. When Apollo 12 landed on the moon, they tried to get as close as possible to a probe called Surveyor 3 that had already touched down on the moon a few years earlier. NASA wanted astronauts to go check in on it, and what they found was that even though the Apollo spacecraft had landed 180 meters away, Surveyor had been sandblasted by dust that the lander's rocket engines had kicked up. So if we are going to build a moon base where people are constantly landing and lifting off and driving vehicles and walking around, then we need to do as much as possible to eliminate dust from our lives. That means roads and landing pads and hard surface areas around our base camp. The quick and dirty answer in the short term could be rhino snot. That's a nickname that the US military gives to a spray-on product that they use to stabilize dirt roads and helicopter landing pads out in the field. It was popular in Afghanistan for turning
I was going to mention this product.
Desert sand into solid material. They found it particularly useful for eliminating dust clouds created by helicopter takeoff.
like for a helicopter medevac, for a special operations field medic, when he's calling in for a medevac, you need something, because the main problem, we had a lot of issues with this picture you're seeing right now. If you have a medevac coming in a war zone and you're in a desert and it goes to land, it will do more harm to your patient than the bullet that your patient took. So we had issues with how to get injured away from the battlefield. That was a serious problem for us before the 1991 war. And as you can see, would you like to have a hole in your shoulder and then be sandblasted like that because your medevac is coming in?
And landing. So that's a potential solution for the short term. It's not ideal because we have to transport all of this rhino snot material from the Earth, and we are basically polluting the moon, filling it up with microplastics. So a more sustainable answer that can actually be scaled up to build a small city on the moon would be to just melt the surface into solid glass. This is something that the European Space Agency is working on right now with an experiment called PAVR. Scientists have been using simulated moon dust with a powerful laser to experiment with melting the dust into a solid glass-like surface. This is an idea that kind of dates back to 1933, when people thought that you could pave roads through the deserts of Earth just by melting the sand. Makes sense, right? Glass is just melted sand. The idea was wildly impractical for that time and place, but in a future moon base, it might be the best option we've got. Now, we probably don't have to bring a giant laser to the moon. Instead, what we could do is set up a big magnifying glass to concentrate the sunlight. Specifically, they'd use something called a Fresnel lens. It concentrates light using grooves carved into a flat piece of clear plastic, so it eliminates the need for a big curved piece of glass. And the Fresnel lens would only need to be just under 2.5 meters wide. But given the geography at the lunar South Pole, where the sun is low on the horizon and the shadows are long, we might just need lasers as well. Either way, this would be a slow process. The Europeans working on the PAVR experiment estimate that we could make a 100 square meter landing pad with a thickness of 2 centimeters in 115 days. That is something like 100 times more slowly than paving roads with traditional asphalt. So, it's a big job, but we are going to spend a lot of time driving on the moon. Our primary transportation will be pressurized rover vehicles, like this one being developed by the Japanese space program in partnership with Toyota, also known as the Lunar Cruiser. Rovers like this will be how we move around the moon base without having to constantly be getting in and out of spacesuits all day. You move directly from your pressurized habitat to your pressurized rover, and then onto the next building. This is also how we explore deep into the wild. Lunar Cruiser is essentially an RV for the moon. It can support 2 astronauts on a road trip that can last for 30 days or more and would be powered by a hydrogen fuel cell. Now, having an RV is cool and all, but where do we live? Well, we need to break that down into short-term accommodation and long-term. Building a moon base is not going to happen overnight, and NASA has already designed our first lunar house. They call it the Foundation Surface Habitat. It's a 3-story structure that combines a metal frame with an inflatable module and will support up to 4 people over a time period of about 1 month, although the Foundation will mostly be occupied by 2 astronauts while the other 2 crew members are out exploring the moon in their pressurized vehicle. The ground level of Foundation is a metal structure that will be 4 meters in diameter. It contains the airlock and EVA suits, plus a science station for geological experiments with lunar samples. Astronauts climb a ladder to reach the second level in the inflatable module. This expands to 6.5 meters in diameter. This is also where we'll find the hygiene and exercise equipment. There's also a biology lab where astronauts will study the effects of the lunar environment on plants and animals. Going up to the 3rd level is the primary living space for the crew. There are beds, a medical station, kitchen, and computer workstation. There is also a human research lab where astronauts themselves become the guinea pigs in a study of how long-term habitation on the moon affects the human body.
Solar doesn't always save you money. After having been fortunate enough.
Now, if we can get past the foundation period, then we need to start building permanent structures on the moon, something that provides a level of protection and security. We need to insulate ourselves from the dangerous cosmic radiation, mitigate the effects of wild temperature swings between the lunar day and night, and we also need to be protected from meteorite impacts. To accomplish this, we go back to the beginning of human architecture. We build with bricks. In the same way that scientists believe we can melt the lunar surface to create glass roadways, they also think we can bake moon dust into structural bricks. The idea is that we could still use something like an inflatable habitat or even a solid metal structure, but then we encase it in a shell of brickwork. This should mitigate most of the dangers from radiation and micrometeorite impacts while providing an insulating layer to make heating and cooling the habitat more efficient. China has already begun testing their own moon bricks. Their idea is to build this egg-shaped structure called the moon pot vessel. The construction would be done by robots and incorporate traditional Chinese construction techniques with bricks made from lunar soil in addition to 3D printing. In 2024, China began an experiment to create bricks from 5 different simulated lunar soil compositions and tested 3 distinct methods for heating the soil into solid rock. Then, in November, they transported those bricks to the Tiangong space station, where they were placed on an external experiment rack. The bricks will spend the next 3 years being exposed to the vacuum of space, cosmic rays, and large temperature changes to see how well they hold up. There's also this wild concept to combine glass melting and habitat construction into a giant sphere structure on the moon. This looks insane, but a US company called Skyports has received funding from the NASA Institute for Advanced Concepts to develop the idea. What they do is basically just glass blowing on a large scale. You heat the moon dust until it becomes a molten goo, then you use compressed gas to blow it up into a big sphere. Since there's no atmosphere and very multiple layers of glass with air gaps in between, kind of like a multi-pane window. Probably not the most practical idea, but it's pretty neat. Either way, none of this is going to work without power. So where does that come from? Well, there's the sun. We all know that one. Most lunar missions to date have been mostly solar powered, and that's worked well enough. But there's a big problem with solar energy on the moon. Because the moon rotates so much slower than the Earth, it ends up with this very long day and night cycle. 2 weeks of sun followed by 2 weeks of darkness. That was never a problem for human missions because those guys were only ever up there for 3 to 4 days tops. But when we send an autonomous lander or rover with solar power, they are only able to work for 14 days. Then they freeze solid for the next 14 days, and most of them just never turn back on once the sunlight returns. Even if they do, they don't work the way that they used to before the sun went down. Now let's flip back to our map of the 13 potential Artemis landing sites. Check out all of those shadows. Most of those areas are in permanent shade. Sunlight never gets in there. And those are the locations where we are most certainly going to find the water ice that we need to sustain our moon city. So the answer is to go nuclear. Nuclear power in space is not exactly new. China has been operating a nuclear-powered rover on the far side of the moon for a few years now. NASA has been using nuclear rovers on Mars for over a decade. Their Voyager probes from the 1970s are also nuclear-powered. But these are all very small-scale operations. These generators use the heat produced by naturally decaying radioactive material and convert that into a few watts of electricity. It's fine for a robot, but you cannot scale that up to something that would power an entire lunar base. We need a nuclear power plant on the moon, and that's exactly what NASA has been working on for several years now. They call it the Fission Surface Power Project. This uses the same fission reaction that is standard at all nuclear power plants on Earth. You split atoms of uranium fuel, which release a tremendous amount of energy that manifests in the form of heat. In space, where there's no water to boil to drive a steam turbine, we can use something called a Brayton converter to turn heat into electricity. It's pretty complicated. I wouldn't worry too much about how it works. It just does. And one of the advantages to those shadowy craters that never see sunlight is that we can just put the nuclear reactor down in there and it will never overheat. The trick is that these reactors have to be small. NASA specifies that the weight needs to stay under 6 metric tons, and it can't be any bigger than an average car. For a nuclear power plant, that's incredibly tiny, but for a space system, it's still pretty big. Rolls-Royce is actually one of the companies leading the way in space-based nuclear technology. Most people probably only think they make super luxury cars, but Rolls-Royce has been manufacturing nuclear reactors for the British Navy submarines for over 60 years now, so they have a lot of experience in the field. Their current microreactor design is aiming to produce between 50 and 100 kilowatts of electricity, which on the high end would be enough to power a small factory or a few average houses. So just one of these would be plenty to get us started with a small moon base. And then we'd only need to stack a few of them together and we could power a moon city. So there it is, our first outpost beyond the Earth, a gateway to the solar system. If we can figure out how to not just live on the moon, but thrive and build and expand, then we've unlocked new possibilities in space that would never be possible from the Earth. This is how we boldly go where no one has gone before.
That's how we boldly go where no one has gone before. But we always bring cake with us, because without cake, you ain't got nothing. And more importantly than that, it should be a chocolate cake. But I don't have a good picture of a chocolate cake, so I can't show. See what's the best chocolate cake I got? Boom, right there. There's only, possibly 4 chocolate cakes there. Definitely 3. Well, you know, speaking of the Bible, reading Genesis pretty much explains that we were not native to this planet. We were created to and put on this planet in a protected area called Eden, for which went away when Adam and Eve sinned. And for which Cain, who killed Abel, was thrown out into a multitude of blue-skinned people. What's up, Ruby? And what is the multitude of blue-skinned people? I don't know, but they didn't come from Adam and Eve, so who knows? Now, what do you call it? Not archaeologists, but bone people who do archaeology on bone and come up with old civilizations based off of bone science, have found another species of human that became extinct, they believe, because of the Homo sapien, which means there is a possibility that the evolutionist story and creationist story are actually the same thing. It's just we don't see them as the same thing, to where God put us on a planet that he created and it had living things on it, and he created this small area on it called Eden, and he put his creation on that. And then when they screwed up, he released them into the rest of the planet, along with everything else that happens of choice of free will. Good and evil starts happening to them. And that could be a total explanation for everything. One reason why I like Chris Langan, he seems to be able to put things together that other supposed smart people like Einstein and whatnot can't do. And that is, it's an accumulation of everything. No one side is right. It seems to be like every piece of everyone's thought process on how things works is right. The only problem is they think they're the only ones that are right, and that's where they are wrong, because only what they're right about is their component of what they're working on is the right component of the whole. But the persons who doing the research think that their component is the whole because of greed, selfishness, money, fame, fortune. And that is, hey, what's up, Sean? That's one reason why we get held down with our philosophies, physics most especially. Because physics hasn't done, as in that one lady physicist I show, Bonhoeffer, whatever her name is. She says physics has been dead for 50 years because no one has dissenting opinions. It's like everyone coattails off people trying to prove them right rather than prove them wrong. And you should try and prove people wrong in physics. And if you can't, that validates their stance. And if you don't look at it that way, then physics is a bunch of crap. All right, well, I've been going for about an hour. So let's see, Danielle never came up, or at least I don't see her. So maybe on the next live stream you'll come up. I'm going to go ahead and end this one. I don't want to keep you guys for too much longer than an hour. And then since I'm working, I actually have extra shit I got to do on the weekends that I can't get done during the weekday. So I'm going to end it about an hour. I appreciate each and every one of you showing up. Thank you for your time. I hope there was a little bit of enlightenment going on with some of the information I presented to you guys. And peace out.